Hello, welcome to Matter Arising on Elite TV, and this is Jay. Now, the Presidential Petition Tribunal sitting in Abuja, the appeal courts, date is almost here for the disqualification of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the President-elect of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Election was conducted. We all know all this drama, and the hearing began sometimes in March, and up to now the case is still ongoing. As final address from APC, Labour Party, is responding to the final address from APC, INEC, Shetima and Tinubu. In the last episode, I brought to you about the final address of the Labour Party, responding to the address of Tinubu and Shetima. So this time around, I am giving you the response of the Labour Party final address to that of APC and INEC. Stay with me to the end of this video to have a full understanding. This is a summary of the final address of Labour Party in response to what the INEC claim, their arguments. So Labour Party and Peter Obi have responded to the argument of APC and INEC. But before I give you that details, let me quickly give or show you what is trending today. And there is this mass barrier that the Lagos state government want to conduct. Now, they said over 103 people were recovered. Now, let me read it as Punch News reported. It says the Lagos state government has approved the mass burial of 103 corpses recovered in the aftermath of the mass protest that rocked the state in October 2020, where youth sought the disbandment of the defaulted Special Anti-Robbery Squad. The State Ministry of Health confirmed this in a statement signed by its permanent secretary, Dr. Olusegun. He made available to our correspondent by, let me leave all those one, the chief press secretary, blah, 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 blah. Let me go to the last paragraph. He said the statement was in reaction to an early leaked letter over the weekend from the Lagos State Public Procurement Agency dated July 19, 2023, addressing to the Ministry of Health and signed by the Director General of the agency, Mr. Idowu. The letter reviewed the approval of the sum of 61,285,000 naira for the mass burial. The question here is this. I thought after the massacre in Lekki, I thought that they said nobody dies. I thought they said, even Tinubu said those that were there, and after, they should answer question. I thought they said there were photoshops, according to the spokesperson of the military as of that time. What happened now? Who are they burying now? Even the state government is claiming that only 3 bodies were recovered from the scene, that the rest body, that is the 100 bodies, were recovered from different spots of the protest. But it happens almost simultaneously, like at the same time. So who is fooling who here? Anyway, let me not talk much about this. You already know this, but this is another avenue to steal from. Even when they killed, they're the one that killed, you kill your own picking. Now you want to steal money for killing your own picking on top of that one. 61 million naira to do what? As in to bury. Anyway, if you stay with us, tomorrow I'll be bringing you a reaction about people, the reaction and what people are saying concerning this Lagos State scam on how to loot fund from those that died. So now this is the summary of the Labour Party response to the Independent National Electoral Commission. Now let me go straight to the point. The Labour Party started by saying that it is difficult to comprehend why INEC would abandon its primary responsibility of being an electoral umpire and proudly put on the tag of a candidate in the election it conducted. They further stated that INEC didn't release relevant document to Labour Party despite court order. We all know that. They continue by raising 3 issues for determination. The first was as regards to whether Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Shettima was qualified to contest. The second is the second is no The second is on non-compliance of INEC to electoral guidelines. Please, pardon me. The third is on qualification vis-a-vis the non-compliances. On the first issue, they defined money laundering and mentioned the fact that its nature and character clearly involve dishonesty on the part of the person who engaged in money laundering, as in this case, BAT, that is Ahmed Tinubu. Labour Party argued that APC in their final address were wrong to say that a conviction must exist from a person will be disqualified from contesting for the office of the president. They also argued that the U.S. district judgment, the tender, was in full compliance with the law. They further argued that by the express meaning and intendment of Section 137, subsection 1D of the Nigerian Constitution, a person who even thought not convicted have fortified property on account of criminal conduct should not aspire to or be allowed to occupy the exalted office of the President of Nigeria. On disqualification of Shettima, they relied on Section 142 of the Constitution, which provides that a person shall not be validly nominated unless he nominates another candidate as his associate. They also rely on Section 34 of the Electoral Act, which is on double nomination, and argue that Shettima nomination as a senator was never withdrawn by law. They argue relying on PDP versus the that for the reason given, both candidates should be disqualified. Reason being that their joint ticket is vented by disqualification of Shettima. On the second issue, they argue that through the documentary evidence before the court and the unchallenged expert and technical evidence of Labour Party witness, Labour Party has provided that the non-compliance by INEC with the relevant provision of the Electoral Act and the subsidiary legislation subsequently affected the outcome of the questioned presidential election held on 25th of February 2023. Furthermore, Labour Party argued that the election manual and regulation is a subjectory legislation which has the force of law. They have their origin from the Constitution and the Electoral Act. They argue they rely on Falake versus INEC, stating that INEC should have complied with its manual as regarded transmission. As regard the Federal High Court judgment relied on by INEC, Labour Party argued that the decision in Oyetola versus INEC, which is a Supreme Court decision, overruled that. In the said case, the court had that while there is no part in the Electoral Act and INEC guidelines that require that election result of a polling unit should during the poll be transmitted on the spot to the INEC National Electoral Registrar database. The regulation provided that the beavers be used to scan the complete result in from EC8A and transmit and upload the scanned copy of the polling unit result to the coalition system and INEC result viewing portal IREV. In addressing the testimony of witness, Labour Party argued that INEC, in an attempt to discredit the evidence witness, PW7 described her as a person of interest in the outcome of the proceeding. However, she tendered documents which are publicly accessible, and they also mentioned that INEC did not deny hosting its servers. They further argued that INEC witness in paragraph 27 and 28 of its witness statement on oath misleading and incorrectly claimed that all polling unit results at the close of polling were immediately and tremendously uploaded. Yeah. I hope we are seeing. Now, this is what INEC are saying. They said immediately after they voted that they transmit those results immediately. My brother, my sister, I believe you know what happened on the 25th and 23rd, 25th, 26th, and 27th of February. Furthermore, and still went ahead to state that the downtime encountered on the application lasted 4 hours 50 minutes until it was resolved, and the first presidential result was successfully uploaded at 8:55 p.m. on the 25th of February 2023. They further argued that believing that the blue certified copy with INEC's sole witness claim to be the copy of the original is like believing that you can harvest apple from palm tree or apples from so Labour Party was just throwing blow and jabs. Can you imagine harvesting orange from mango tree? That is what it means from what the INEC people are saying. So let's go further. They further argue that the unchallenging expert evidence of the Labour Party and Peter Obi witness include the documentary evidence before the court have established that the non-compliance of INEC in the circumstances of the instant petition were not only substantial but grievously affected the outcome of the presidential election. Still on the evidence of INEC's sole witness, they mentioned that in a futile attempt to justify the technological glitch, INEC witness RW1 tender an alleged Amazon Web Service Cloud trial logs showing the total technological glitch, but on cross-examination, his evidence showed that the evidence he tendered didn't meet the criteria a cloud trial should have. A cloud trial should ordinarily have an event time, event source IP address, etc., but the one tendered by the INEC witness did not have most of the criteria. On substantial non-compliance, the petitioners mentioned that they tendered 18,088 polling unit results downloaded from IRF portal, and they were admitted. Some were blurred and some showed pictures of unknown persons, yet INEC certified them. Labour Party mentioned that the INEC officials, with respect, must have a bruised sense of humor to have done that. Oh God, this is a big job. Let's continue. They mentioned that ordinarily the results on the IRF should be exact the same with the hand copy and not blurred. That was what Festus Okoye said. I keep on repeating this, and just take a look. This is what Festus Okoye said. Now, you've seen what Festus Okoye have said. Now, look at what is being written here. They mentioned that the non-compliance affected 14 states and 168 local government areas as evidenced by the exhibit standard. On issue 3 or 3rd, as regards the return of Bat and Shetima, they based their argument on the fact that Bat did not obtain up to 25% in the FCT. Labour Party argued that a holistic reading of the section 299 of the Constitution seems to suggest that the FCT will be considered as a state for the purpose of enjoying the executive, legislative, and judicial power vested in the state. Hence, the FCT is executively administered by the President and the National Assembly legislators. The local laws of the FCT and the FCT High Court is the court with territorial jurisdiction in the FCT. They further submitted that FCT will be registered as a state to that extent alone and no more. They argue that the Constitution gives the interpretation that a winning candidate must have 25% of vote cast into third of states in the federal and FCT, meaning that a winning candidate must obtain 25% in 24 states and also 25% in FCT. They further stated that part 2 of the second schedule lists the state of the federation and the FCT is not included as a state. Conclusively, they respectfully argued the call to grant all their relief. This is costly of Miss Paris once again. She made this available for us to make it much more easier and for you to have this beautiful information about the final address of APC and INEC, of which Labour Party is responding to. So now this is it. And let me give you now the details of the summary of the response of Labour Party Peter Obi to APC. The Labour Party started by mentioning that the fact that APC did not call any witness and thereby abandon its pleading, and have no right to say that the event and material attached to the petition by Labour Party and Obi are grossly insufficient to sustain the petition. They also continue by raising 3 issues for determination and argue same. The first issue obtained on if Bat and Shetima were qualified to contest. The second was on non-compliance. The third was on the declaration and return of Bat vis-a-vis non-compliance. I regard the first issue. Labour Party argued that APC in their final address were wrong to say that a conviction must exist before a person will be disqualified from contesting for the office of the president. They also argued that the U.S. district judgment that tender was a full compliance with the law. This is almost the same thing to what we just talked about, because the same thing that INEC is saying, the same thing APC is saying, and there is no need while somebody will be talking of how to eat rice, fried rice, and then you'll be here talking of how to cook or to eat swallow. It doesn't make any sense. So it's just almost similar thing, but let me just glance through. They further argue that a civil forfeiture in the US amounts in a fine, and that if Bat was not personally affected as APC claimed, he would not have challenged the proceeding. They further argue that by the express meaning and intent of Section 137, Section 1D of the Nigerian Constitution, a person who, even though not convicted, have fortified property or amount of criminal conduct should not aspire to be or be allowed to occupy the exalted office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So if the APC are saying that this is that Tinubu did not do this and that, then why are they challenging it? They should allow it to be. Now that is what the Labour Party are saying. On disqualification of Shetima, they raise on Section 142. I talked about that earlier. And they also rely on Section 34 of the Electoral Act. I said that earlier. On non-compliance, they argue that APC cannot state that Labour Party did not discharge the bound of proof placed on them by law when the APC didn't provide any evidence in the petition. They further argue that the courts, that their correct position of the law is the one established in the case of Oyotela versus INEC, which I talked about earlier. They further argue that the argument of APC saying that Labour Party had the duty to prove non-compliance until by unit, word by word, and also show figures is flawed as such is inapplicable under the present regime governed by the Electoral Act 2022. Can you imagine? These APC people, they don't even have sense. No single shingbang sense. They don't have it. Why will you be taking somebody to Stone Age when we are in the modern era? They're saying, okay, come and show us word to word. Okay, let's bring your unit to unit. That means this case will now be lasting for the next 100 years. Because how many units do we have? How many polling units do we have in Nigeria? Over hundreds of thousands of polling units. So you come and be showing, I beg, may they park one side. They also argue, after citing the case of Senator Julius Ali Ochan versus Chief Martins, that when a petitioner raises a non-compliance, the border shift to the respondent and to rebuke same. And this was not done by APC. On the argument of dumping documents on the court, Labour Party argued by relying on paragraph 46(4) of the first schedule of the Electoral Act, which affirmed that documentary evidence shall be demonstrated in open court after it has been taken as read by consent. on transfer and transmission, they argue relying on Section 65 of the Electoral Act 2022, which means it's published where a preceding officer does not transfer the result as prescribed by the Commission. On the alleged technology glitch, they argue that the temporary failure of communication between the e-transmission system and the IRF portal, as INEC claimed, were false. They mentioned with weakness, I talked about this earlier. And this is all about APC. No much more to talk. They're almost the same thing. Okay, let me talk about this one. Finally, on declaration return of BAT, the same thing I just talked about. Meaning the winning candidate must obtain 25%. The same thing I just talked about. Then they concluded by asking the court to discontinue the argument of APC as being devoid of any sanity, anything that have to do with merit and sanity, and hold that the petitioners have the case and grant them the leave. So APC does not have any case. They lack the sanctity to even present themselves before the court to talk about anything here. All they need to do is to just pack their load and go back to their village, and allow people that have, first-hand, information on how to rule or to govern in the 21st century to govern. So this is it about the summary of the response from Labour Party and Peter Obi to APC, INEC, and Shettima and Tinubu. Now, all we have next to do now is to wait for the response that these people will give to that Peter Obi and Labour Party response, and after which the judgment day will be passed, where Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Shettima will be disqualified officially, and then we have the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in person of President-elect in waiting, Peter Obi, or Atiku Abubakar, depending on how the judges look at the case. I'm not here to tell you that this is the person that will win and all of that, but this is just what is going on. All of us know that Tinubu cannot continue in office as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria because of all those humongous allegation. Now look at the United States saying they cannot release the document, indicting Tinubu in 2026, meaning is because he's the president. If they release those things, it will cause chaos. Just like the president said, if you remove me, you are beckoning on anarchy. And we are seeing a lot of clip of some personnel in Nigeria on social media. Although I'm here to confirm that, I would have bring that to you to see of how they are preparing themselves, to cause problem across Nigeria. But however, we believe that everybody will stay law abiding as always, and when the deal has been done, we hope for a better Nigeria. Thank you for watching. Please do it to subscribe to this beautiful channel and get much more of this good videos that we'll be bringing to you in the coming days. Please subscribe, refer your people, react positively.